My name is Jeff Gibby, as Dave said, and I'm going to start with a little bit of a legal disclaimer, then I'm going to show a slide and just kind of talk to you a little bit about my background, and then we're going to talk about a method that's very, very popular called the Ichimoku Kinko Hui method. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I have to do is make my lawyers happy. So today's demonstration is designed to instruct you on using MetaStock and the accompanying software plugins and add-ons. It is not a recommendation to buy or sell, but rather guidelines to interpreting and using specific indicators and features within the software. The information, software, and techniques presented today should only be used by investors who are aware of the risk inherent in trading. MetaStock and its employees shall have no liability for any investment decisions based on the use of the software, any trading strategies, or any information provided in connection with the company. MetaStock and its employees do not endorse the purchase of any security, nor are they paid for the promotion of a security. No information contained in the presentation today should be construed as investment advice or the solicitation to buy a security. So that's what I have to say there. Also today, we might look at some current symbols and some current examples, but my main goal is to kind of help you get a better understanding of the Ichimoku method. So, and kind of how it works and kind of how you can use it to maybe identify some better trades. So, as Dave said earlier, my name is Jeff Gibby. I've worked here at MetaStock for, let's see, I started in 1997, so 28 years. And it's been a great place to work. I love it. When I started, I talked to a lot of traders about how they're trading, what they wanted to do to improve, and all that kind of good stuff. It's been a great place to work. Right now, my job title is Director of Sales, and I still am in charge of our sales team, but I also work a lot in terms of setting up our events and just a whole bunch of other stuff. But it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy MetaStock. If you're not familiar with MetaStock, I hope you've had a chance to read the company history. I'm not going to go through it blow by blow, but what I want to do say is that MetaStock's a hugely established company. We've been doing making software since the 1980s. We have a partnership. Let's call it a partnership with London Stock Exchange Group, because that's what it is. They're the people that bought the Reuters, Thomson Reuters infrastructure for news, data, all that kind of stuff. And so as such, you know, I'm going to be talking mostly about American stocks because that's what I trade. That's what I like to look at. But you can use this in just about any market on earth. So it's been a great company to work for. It's been a great product to represent. I personally trade quite a bit, and I really, one of the things I rely most heavily on when it comes to MetaStock is the ability to go through a large amount of data, scan through it. We call it explorations. I'm going to show you an example of one, but just to kind of go through a large number of stocks and just find the ones that have an opportunity I might be interested in today. So in that case, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about MetaStock today. I want to teach you something, but before I kind of move on to that, I do want to kind of brag a little bit. I think this is really cool. There's a couple of things we're really proud of as a company. The first is for the 32nd year in a row, MetaStock was rated #1 by the readers of Stocks and Commodities magazine. So hugely well-established product, something that people use all the time. And that's one of the things that we're proud of. The other thing, in case you're interested, is our support team. They do such a really great job. We keep more people in support than we keep in sales and marketing. And they do a really, really good job. If you ever have any questions, you need to call them, you need to chat with them. They're generally fairly available. So today, as I said a little bit earlier, this is actually from a MetaStock 19 chart, but I want to talk a little bit about a new methodology that we include with MetaStock. This is a list of the new systems that were just included in MetaStock: ETS, the Ichimoku Master, the Gap Identification System, and the RMO system, an update to it. But what I really want to talk about is this add-on, this methodology that's just included with MetaStock for free. So I want to be really, really clear. I'm just going to talk about a really, really small part of MetaStock. When we start to talk about the number of methodologies that are in MetaStock, there's, I think, a few hundred of them right now, and all of them come packed into the software and that kind of stuff. But I really like Ichimoku. This is a methodology that we kind of went out, we purchased it, we include it in every copy of MetaStock. And I just think it's really cool. It's a very, very popular methodology. And it was developed by this gentleman, Goichi Hasada. Goichi Hasada is the name of the gentleman. He also went by Ichimoku Sanjin. Ichimoku was kind of a pen name for him. He was a journalist. And Ichimoku Sanjin can be roughly translated to what a man in the mountains sees. So over the years, he developed the Ichimoku method. He started in the 1930s, and he actually released the whole methodology to the public in the 1960s. So it's actually been around for almost 100 years now, and it's been something, again, that I see a lot of people teach how to use, train people on how to use, and it's been something that, like, I've seen courses that just kind of talk about how to use it that cost like couple $1,000, $5,000. I'm going to show you kind of all the methodologies, kind of how everything kind of works together and how it fits together. So in case you're wondering, you're probably not. But if you want to know what Ichimoku Kinko Hui stands for, it translates to a one glance at an equilibrium chart. It gives you an instant look at the balance charts. And it's sometimes referred to as a one glance cloud chart. And it has some unite clouds, and that's why a lot of people refer to it as clouds. I want to encourage you as we go. If you have questions, please ask. I've tried to kind of set this up and structure it in such a way that it's very, very straightforward to you, that you can understand it very easily. That's kind of the whole goal for this one, okay? But again, if something I say isn't clear, feel free to go ahead and ask and let me know. Okay. Also, I'm curious. I'm going to ask you a question, and I would encourage you to answer this. Are you familiar with Ichimoku as a method? If you are, say yes in the comments. If you're not, say no in the comments. I'm just kind of curious in terms of, I'd like to get a feel for it. Okay. Either way, though, I hope you learned something today, and that's really kind of I have two goals for today's presentation. One, I want to teach you this. Patricia says yes, she's familiar with it. Two, I want to get you interested in MetaStock, and maybe even interested enough to get more information or get a special offer that I'm going to talk about. So those are my two goals. Amy says yes. Max says yes. Okay. All right. What I want to do is talk about the uses for the Ichimoku, and then I'm going to go through all the indicators that are part of it. I'm going to kind of go through they're calculated and how they're interpreted, and just, there's quite a few indicators in here. There's quite a few different things that are designed to do different things, and I want to kind of make sure I cover everything. So in terms of the uses of the Ichimoku, the one chart at a glance is used to give buy and sell indications. There's really two signals that you can get from the Ichimoku, and I'll cover both. It helps you determine bullish and bearishness from a number of different angles and views, and we'll cover that. The cloud, the Kumo means cloud in Japanese. The Kumo has helped you to determine where support and resistance is now and into the future, and also anticipate future price direction. And then there's also some things in there that help you identify the stability of the trend, help you identify potential reversals, and you can use a lot of the different clouds as a stop placement technique. So it's a lot to cover. It actually doesn't usually take me too long to go through it all because it's fairly straightforward. Ed says yes. So no no's. We have Patricia, Mac, Amy, and Ed. All of you guys said yes, you're familiar with this. Let's go for a refresher. All right. The indicators that are consisted of the Ichimoku are the Tenkan-sen, the Kijun-sen, the Senku-span A, which is one part of the cloud. I was going to say the top of the cloud, but that's not exactly accurate. The Senku-span B, that's another part of the cloud, and the difference between Senku-span A and Senku-span B would be the cloud or the Kumo. That's why I have Kumo kind of right here. You've also got the Chikou-span and the close. Okay, and we're just going to break them down. We're going to go through them one at a time. We're going to talk about how to use them and how they generate buy and sell signals and how you can kind of read them. Okay, so let's start with the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen. Okay, when I was actually kind of doing a little bit, I usually, to kind of get some of the background of this, I went up to Wikipedia just to kind of refresh my details and my memory on the stories. Wikipedia is a great resource. I go up there a lot of times just to kind of get the story, so I can remember that it was 1930 that he developed it in 1960. But one of the things that kind of struck me on that Wikipedia page, as I said, it's a moving average based system, and that's just not true. It's not using moving averages at all in terms of its calculations. Instead, it's using more of a midpoint calculation. So the first two indicators that we're going to talk about are the Tenkan-sen A and the Kijun-sen, or the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen. The Tenkan-sen in this particular example right here is a pink indicator. And if I wanted to tell you how to calculate it, I'm going to look back in the last 9 days. I'm going to take the highest high in that 9 days. I'm going to add it to the lowest low in that 9 days. I'm going to divide that value by 2. And the value that I'll get is going to be this pink line, updated every day. Okay, that's the Tenkan-sen. Okay, the Kijun-sen is going to be the same calculation, except for I'm going to take the highest high value for 26 days, the lowest low value for 26 days, and I'm going to divide those two values by 2. Patricia, I was reading your comment. I like the magnet to the cloud for retracement. Cool. All right. So in some ways, it's not at all a moving average. It's a midpoint for 9 days, and it's a midpoint in 26 days. But you can kind of read it if you're familiar with the concepts and the ideas of reading a shorter term moving average and a longer term moving averages and understanding the correlation between them. Again, it's not, you're just looking at a short term midpoint and a longer term midpoint, okay? But the evaluation method is very, very similar. If our Tenkan-sen, if the pink line here, is above our Kijun-sen, that's an indication that your stock is bullish, just like if you had a shorter term moving average and a longer term moving average. Also, the secondary buy signal for Ichimoku is generated because of the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen. Okay, so when the Tenkan-sen, and you can kind of see it over here, my slide kind of keeps popping up, but when the Tenkan-sen crosses up above the Kijun-sen, that would be a secondary buy signal, not a primary buy signal. That has to do with the price movement in the cloud, and we'll talk about it later. But these are two primary uses for the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen. Number one is it bullish? Are we bullish right now? And that's true if our Tenkan-sen is above our Kijun-sen. And the second one is as a signal. If our Tenkan-sen crosses up above our Kijun-sen, like it does right here, that's going to be a secondary buy indication. Okay, I have a live chart. This has been a chart, probably one of my more successful trades this year, a chart of Roblox. Okay, I'm just going to zoom up a little bit right here. We'll just talk a little bit about this on the chart example. I do not have like the expert advisor attached to this just because I want to go through the indicators one at a time. I actually don't want this relative distance from the cloud. I'm going to take that off. Okay, but what we've got here is we've got the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen. Okay. When that Tenkan-sen crosses up above the Kijun-sen, this would be your secondary buy signal, not your primary buy signal, your secondary buy signal. And if the Tenkan-sen is above the Kijun-sen, like it is in this whole area right here, then it's going to be bullish. Okay, that's going to be an indication that the stock is in a bullish trend. Okay, Patricia says magnet to the knot. Yes, when the green cloud goes to a red cloud and vice versa. I heard that in the cloud course. Cool. All right. That's it. That's the Tenkan-sen. It's the Kijun-sen. Let's move on to some of the other indicators. This isn't that hard. Okay. And I think the next ones that we're going to talk about is literally the, we'll reiterate the Tenkan-sen is above the Kijun-sen, that's bullish. The Tenkan-sen below the Kijun-sen is bearish, and the cross is indicated by sell signal. Okay. Next, I want to talk about the Senkou span A and the Senkou span B. Okay, in a bullish trend, the Senkou span A is going to be above the Senkou span B. Okay, in a bearish trend, your Senkou span A is going to be underneath your Senkou span B. Okay, when that cross happens, that's called a Kumo or a clap test. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me kind of back up. Let's talk about kind of the difference between, or how the Senkou span A is calculated and how the Senkou span B is calculated. So if this is the part of the chart that projects into the future. And the reason that it projects into the future is if I wanted to calculate the Senku span A, what I would do is I'd take the Tenkan-sen, this one right here, and the Kijun-sen, I'd add those together and divide it by 2 and plot it 26 bars into the future. Okay, so this right here is just the midpoint of these two lines, but plotted into the future. And so if you ever kind of look at the end here, it's right exactly in the middle because we're just looking at the midpoint of these two lines, but projected in the future. Okay. For the Senku span B, which is the bottom of this cloud here, and it can be on top too, the Senku span B is I'll take the same calculation we used before, the highest high and the lowest low, and divide it by 2, except for I look at a much longer time frame. I'm going to look at 52 days. Okay. Again, we're looking at the midpoint of these two midpoints and the midpoint for 52 days. And so a lot of what we kind of understand, if we understand kind of some of the concepts of looking at a moving average based system, are going to apply, because we're looking at, in this case, a shorter term midpoint and a longer term midpoint. Okay. So what that means, oh, and the difference between this value and this value is the colored in area. That's traditionally, or it's not traditionally, it is called the Kumo. Okay, and if I ever say Kumo cloud, you can laugh at me in the comments because I'm just saying cloud at that point. So if our Senku span A is above our Senku span B, your cloud's going to be colored in green. That's an indication that you're bullish right now. If your Senku span A is below your Senku span B, that's an indication that you're bearish. That's why the cloud is either green or red. It just indicates if you're in a bullish or a bearish phase. And that's one of the ways that you read it. Very, very simple. Okay. When this Kumo twist happens, which I haven't heard it referred to as a knot before, Patricia, but I like that term. This right here is called a Kumo twist. It's also a bullish or a bearish indication. So right here, if we're looking at this chart, we can see that in the future, there's a cloud twist coming that would actually be bearish in the future in terms of the way we'd be looking at this particular stock. The other thing that's important about the Kumo, and I'm trying to not forget anything, but that's why I list everything out. If our price is above the Kumo, that's bullish. Okay, so there's a lot of bullish bearish readings that we're going to kind of start to talk about and get into. But if our price is above the Kumo, that's bullish. Okay, our primary buy signal, as I talked about our secondary signal, but our primary buy signal is when it crosses up above the Kumo. When price, specifically the close, when the close comes up above the cloud, that's your primary buy signal for Ichimoku. Okay, well, let me skip ahead here. We talked about trend bias. We talked about the relationship to the Kumo. The Kumo does act as support and resistance. So that's where you expect your support is. If you come back down to that level, you're going to treat that level as support until you cross under it, and then you're going to treat it as resistance. You look at the Kumo direction, like is it pointed up? That would be bullish. Is it pointed down? That would be bearish. You look at that both right now and into the future. And again, we talked about the Kumo twist when it crosses. When it knots, as Patricia says, that would be also bullish or bearish. And this is a lot to keep track of. That's why I like kind of the software and the way that it kind of pulls this together for me. So let's just kind of jump back into the chart. Okay. If I'm looking at Roblox, let's just say that we're kind of looking at it right here where it kind of went above the Kumo or above the cloud. Okay. This would be an indication of bullishness because we're up above the cloud. Okay. Our last Kumo twist was bearish, so that's a bearish indication, and you can kind of see that we have a red cloud that's also bearish. Okay. Our Senku span A is above our Senku span B, that's bullish. And so you kind of get a bit of a scoring methodology based on kind of what's happening. Price is above the Kumo, so it's bullish. We're looking at a lot of different factors that are kind of either telling us this is bullish or bearish or giving us conflicting information. Okay. What I want to do real quick though, is I'm actually going to hit the refresh button on this chart because it should be displaying some of the buy and sell signals. I'm not sure why it's not. Let me just do this real quick, Expert Advisor. I'm going to attach the complete one. And you can kind of see when it comes up above the cloud, you get your signals. Okay, this one was because the Tenkan-sen crossed the Kijun-sen. So if I hover over it, it says the TK cross. Here it's because you got your close above the Kumo. Okay, but you kind of get the signals. One of the other things we can get is a bit of a commentary. So I'm going to open up the commentary here. We'll look at the expert advisor commentary. And when I do that, I'm actually going to kind of push this over to the last value on the chart. And oh, I can actually move it around too, but it should be right here on the last chart. We're looking at Roblox. And if I wanted to kind of, right now, it's been extremely bullish. We've had a nice run up. But if the TK cross occurrence is bullish, your price Kumo relationship is bullish, your current Kumo direction is bullish, your future Kumo direction is bullish, your Chikou span relationship to the cloud. Oh, we haven't talked about Chikou span. Ignore that. That's bullish too. And then the relationship to price. And then the next twist is a bullish, and it happened 25 bars ago. We don't have a bearish twist just yet. So at this point, we've kind of gone up a lot on Roblox. Again, I said it was my best trade of the year probably so far. But I can actually look at any of these days that I want to. And if I kind of move it back to this particular signal, I can kind of see what the bullish bearishness relationship looked like. Okay, in this case, we had a bullish TK cross, we had a bullish price Kumo relationship. A current Kumo direction is bearish. Again, that's pointed down. But in the future, it's pointing up. As far as we can see, actually in the future, direction is bullish. The Chikou span relationship to the Kumo is neutral. I'm going to talk about Chikou span in a second, but it kind of breaks all this down for us. Okay. The reason I like to show this to you now is there's a lot of interactions. So the cloud is very important to the Ichimoku method. And so this just helps us keep track of it. All right. So again, this is all of the things. I keep looking at the camera, but my camera's off. The actual cloud is used for. Trend bias, the relationship to the Kumo. The Kumo does act as support and resistance. You can treat that as a support and resistance area. The Kumo direction now and in the future is important. And your last Kumo twist, those are all the important parts about that. And the commentary does help you keep track of that. Okay. The last indicator, well, actually, this is two indicators, but one of them is the close price. The last two indicators that are important for the Ichimoku method is both the close price and the Chikou span. This Chikou span is kind of, in this example, it's this red line that kind of highlights it all. That red line is pointed back 26 days. And all it is, the only thing that it is it's today's price, today's close price projected back 26 bars ago. Okay. And the way that we read that and the uses for that are we look at the relationship to the Kumo. Okay. So if we look at our Roblox example right here, we look at the relationship of this right now and the relationship of it to the Kumo. If it's above the Kumo, the cloud, it indicates stability in our bullish trend. Okay. We also do the same type of analysis when we look at the relationship of this Chikou span to the close price. If we're way above, it means the price has been going up over the last 26 days, because again, it's just looking at price 26 days ago. And if it's above the trend, it indicates stability in the trend that we've established and it's bullish. Okay, so that kind of covers all of the indicators. And there is a lot to kind of pay attention to, but it's actually pretty easy. And I do like this. Well, we do include this in every version of MetaStock, but I do like it because not only does it help us understand the bullishness of this, I'm going to go ahead and kind of push this back to the last bar here, but it tells us kind of what everything's doing. And if you're using, I've seen so many courses that kind of talk about the Ichimoku method. If you're trying to learn about it, let me do a time check. I'm doing okay on time. If you're trying to learn about this particular method, this helps you just keep track of all of the conditions that are important, the way that Ichimoku Sanjin used it, or the way Koichi Hasada used it. Okay, and what's more here, not only does it have kind of like this dashboard view that kind of break down the indicators for you. If I scroll down here, it's going to kind of break down what this is. So if I don't remember what the TK signal is, This black part is going to tell us what that is. This black part doesn't ever change. It isn't analyzing the chart. It's just telling you. I'm not going to read it out loud word for word. I already did that with the legal disclaimer. I'm good for reading things out loud, but it's just telling you the TK signal is when the Tenkan-sen crosses the Kijun-sen, okay? And that is bullish, okay? And then this blue part says it's bullish, or it was a neutral signal that occurred 52 periods ago and supports a bullish direction. Neutral signals usually occur with a middle trend development, although continual crosses within the Kumo show a ranging or holding position, okay? It'll go back and talk about the close and how its relationship to the Kumo is important. It'll tell you why in this paragraph here, and it'll tell you in this case, this bar is above the Kumo, which is bullish. So it kind of breaks down, here's what you're looking for, here's what you're looking for it to do, okay? And it does that with all of the different criteria. I'll stop reading through it, but you kind of get the point. It's going to kind of tell you exactly what's going on with it, what it means, and what it's doing, and kind of help you just kind of analyze this as you get used to it, okay? In addition to that, the Ichimoku didn't have any prescribed stop methodologies, but there's a number of different things that if you're in a long position, you can use as a stop value. And if you kind of get into system testing with MetaStock, you can use loose stops or tight stops. But if we are in a bullish position on Roblox right now, some of the stops we might consider would be the value of the Kijun-sen, and the value of that would be 97.59. If you wanted a medium, that would be the top of your Senku span A. Again, that's what we're treating as support and resistance. So if we break support and resistance, then we all of a sudden we have more of a bearish outlook, and that's exactly a great place to put a stop, right? So you could use the top of the cloud or the bottom of the cloud, and it lists out what those values are. So in addition to that, some of the levels that you treat as support and resistance would be, again, the Kijun-sen is offering support here at 97.50, and then you've got the Senku span A and the Senku span B, and exactly where those values are. Amy says, let's see. Patricia says you need the cross clouds for reversal. Yeah. In fact, the primary signal is when the price closes above the signal. So that's why when we talked about the close above the Kumo, that's the primary signal to go long. The secondary would be the Tenkan-sen thing. Amy says, do you adjust the settings based on if you're a scalper? Oh, then I removed your questions. Amy, this is a good question. Do you adjust the settings based upon if you're a scalper, a swing trading, or a long-term trader? If so, can you explain how you determine the settings you should use? Okay, so the way I would kind of define the way that I trade is I would say that I trade as a swing trader. And that means a lot of different things to different people. I generally can hold positions depending from like maybe a week to 2 or 3 weeks. And if we get in a really good trend on a stock, it could be a while. Okay, as long as it's as long as the stock's going up, I like to hold it. I think that's not unusual. What the adjustments that you could make, and you can make any adjustments that you want in the Senku span or in the Ichimoku method. I generally use the when I'm looking at charts, generally look at the default settings on a daily time frame. If you wanted to trade a little faster, of course, you could go into a lower time frame, and you could kind of play with MetaStock. You can actually go in and say, well, I want to use the loose stops. How does that work? I want to use the tight stops. How does that work? And you can kind of get a feel for exactly the performance of that. And that's pretty easy to do. I don't really, actually, I will show them, but I won't really run a system test right now just because of the fact that I have about 13 minutes left. But if I go into the system tester right here, and I just search for Ichimoku, I can test just based on the current cloud, the future cloud. I can use the method with tight stops and loose stops. And what this will do is I can go in and say, if you're not familiar with system testing, I can say, here's Roblox. Would it be better to use tight stops on this or loose stops? And it'll give you a number, an answer. And you can do that with like all of these methodologies at the same time. You can also feed it against the S&P 500 and kind of get an idea of how every stock individually and as an aggregate works. System testing is very, very cool. And it does allow you to kind of go in and say, well, I want to maybe go a little bit faster. How does this work on an intraday? Does it work as good as a daily? Does it outperform it? You can test those scenarios as part of our MetaStock power tools. And so, but there is one tool I want to talk a little bit more about, and it is the tool that I use every day. And I do think, you know, the system tester is awesome. This expert advisor is really cool. One of the tools that I rely on heavily is the ability to go through data and find opportunities in the marketplace. And I'm going to show you kind of how this, and we call it explorations in MetaStock, but it's scanning. With our scanner, I set this up, I've already run it just so I could kind of just show you the results. But I ran it against the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, the Dow Industrials, and then another group of 500 stocks that I determined are in a trend with another method that I'm not going to jump into right now just because of time. Okay, so in total, I ran about 1,100 stocks, and I fed them into the Ichimoku method. And here's what we're kind of seeing with it. Okay, again, there's some methods. There's quite a few different signals. In this signal column, it tells you what type of a signal you're getting. So in a 2, when we look at the 2, basically it means you get a TK cross while price is above the cloud. That's what we call a re-entry signal in the terms of the methodology, because we want to trade when everything's above the cloud, and the TK cross would be kind of a buy signal while you're above the cloud. Okay, if it's giving us a 1, like InnoData, Ralph Lauren, Quantum, that means yesterday it was trading down below the cloud, and today, at least so far, the close is above the cloud. That would be a main entry signal. Okay, they're not going to have any zeros because those are filtered out. It'll have also a -1, which would be an initial short signal, and it'll have a -2, which would be that's below the cloud and giving that a secondary sell signal. Okay, the thing that I really like about this is because you have all of those things that you can look for a score. You have the Kumo direction, is the close above the Kumo, the future Kumo, the Chikou span versus the Kumo, Chikou span versus price. And what I have right here is a score column. Okay, so if I sort this based on the score, anything that's giving me a 6 is going to be completely bullish. Okay, whereas if I scroll down here a little bit more, we'll get into some 4s and some 3s and some 1s. The developer of this, I thought this was really, really interesting, and even some zeros, right? I thought it was pretty interesting, but the developer of this never wanted to look for the 6s. He was more interested in the 4s and the 3s and the 5s. And the mentality made sense for me, right? If we're looking at a stock of Roblox, okay, it's giving us a complete 6. But look at the run we've had on Roblox, okay? There is a very, very good possibility this is going to continue to go up. But his mentality was he wanted to catch it a little bit earlier in the cycle. And that's why he would use kind of the 3s and the 4s and the 5s instead of the 6s. Okay, so like if we kind of look at here, I'll just jump into an example real quick here, and then we'll kind of just talk a little bit more. We'll wrap up, actually. So if I wanted to look at some 4s today, and I am not going to tell you to buy anything today, but if I wanted to kind of get some examples of stocks that had given 4s, we could look at Hormel, AES, Performance Foods, SBS. This is Gildia Sciences actually that had a 6. So we wanted to look at and just really kind of narrow it down. This was 1,200 stocks that we started in. If we only want to look at the 4s and focus on the stocks that have an opportunity, here's my list of stocks I could look at. I could look at the actual charts and that kind of stuff. So this is just, again, I want to reiterate, this is a small part of MetaStock. When it comes to methodologies that are included, there are hundreds. I did like this one particular, and I bought the rights to include it in MetaStock. So it's included for free with MetaStock 19 now. And if you have MetaStock, thank you. That's awesome. I play with it a little bit. It's very, very cool. Okay. There's also other expert advisors that are going to teach you like about candlesticks, about MACD, about relative strength, anything that you're kind of interested in. It's a great learning tool because it'll help you understand that. So understand the methodologies. And before you learn about it, you can also test them just to see kind of, okay, how often does this Ichimoku trade? Is it really, really active? Is it hyperactive? Is it more than I want to? How does it compare to the pure performance, all that kind of stuff. You can test it, you can find something that you can like, and then you can use the expert advisor to understand it, and then you can scan for it. Such a great toolbox. So we talked all about the Ichimoku. We talked about how you can get buy and sell indications out of it, how you can determine bullish and bearishness. Hopefully you learn something and play with it. It's a really, really cool methodology. I think that there's a reason that it's been so popular and just has gained popularity since the 1960s when it was released to the public. So, but again, it is all, I talked about scanning, I talked about all this kind of stuff. It is a bonus. It's literally a bonus for MetaStock, our top rated software that's been rated #1 in its price category. And this year marks the 32nd year in a row it's been rated #1. I myself couldn't trade without MetaStock. I absolutely love MetaStock. And a lot of our customers are just have been with us for decades as well. I think it's so useful for you that I think if we get you started using MetaStock, you won't you won't stop using it. Patricia says, yes with 5, it ran. Yes with 6, it ran for too long. Patricia says she likes to look at the thickness of the cloud. It's helpful as well as a parameter. So, and she likes to combine it with wave counts. So I love it when somebody is really familiar with the methodology, kind of chime in on it. Okay, 32 years in a row, MetaStock's been rated #1 in its price category. To just highlight some of there's 2 different versions of MetaStock. We have MetaStock real time. It's full real time. It comes with basically some Thomson Reuters news and an institutional quality newsfeed. We didn't talk about it. We're not going to. We have 5 minutes. I'm going to wrap up. But the real-time software with this institutional newsfeed is $265 a month, and then it includes Zenith. Zenith was developed initially at the cost of over $1 billion. It was designed to compete with Bloomberg, and it does have thousands of reporters and hundreds of different news bureaus globally that support the newsfeed. Bloomberg, if you're not aware of the cost of that, it's like $20,000 a month or somewhere in there. You can get an institutional quality newsfeed with broad market information and data and all the kind of good stuff that you might want to have if you're into macro data, and also a fully real-time version of MetaStock, and it'll only be $265 a month. Okay. If you do our DC version, it doesn't include that newsfeed to make it cheap, and it is cheap. DC means delayed charts, which means when you open up a chart during the day, what you're going to get is you'll have daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly, anything above a daily, basically. You're going to get a bar that updates on about a 15-minute delay, sometimes 20. It depends on the exchange. But you'll be able to go in, look at charts during the day, run explorations during the day, and that's only $75 per month. And I do have a couple slides here. This one talks about Ichimoku. I consider it just a bonus. It's just included. It's something that we added to the software for free that really, I do think, adds to the software for free. We have tons of bonuses in there. We've got a gap identification system if you want to trade gaps. We did include, this is just stuff we included in the latest version. We included Michael Murmer's expert trading systems, #2, which is a really, really popular trend following system. We included Jake Bernstein's expansion contraction. Jake Bernstein's a good friend of MetaStock and mine. We just did like a little bit of a podcast with him. Super smart guy, but his new indicator is in here called the XC. We do want you to use MetaStock. It's a software that we've been creating over the course of since the 1980s. And we understand, like a toolbox, the better you understand how to use it, the better it's going to work for you. So as part of your order, as part of your purchase, that's actually, I don't think, anyway, we're going to include training. You're going to get 14 videos to help you get set up and running. Talks about some of our favorite methodologies, how to run scans, how to do explorations, 14 total video course that you can go through on your own. We also do offer a little bit of a white glove onboarding service where you can kind of talk to somebody and they'll help you get set up. They'll help you install MetaStock if you need it. They'll help you get a guided tour of the software and answer any questions you've got. So normally, again, it's $265. You could do our real-time version, or it's $75 if you just want to try the Ichimoku and compare the different methodologies. what we're actually going to do, and the link on here is actually a little bit wrong. I made a little bit of a boo-boo when I typed this up. So I'm going to give you two options. You can just try this for free if you want to. If you go to metastock.com/festival, you can just do a free trial. It'll give you a 1 month evaluation of the software at no commitment to you. So for free, you can basically try out the software that's been rated #1 in its price category for 32 years in a row. If you want to buy a month, I'll give you a second month and a third month for free. You're still going to get all of the bonuses either way. And to do that, you go to metastock.com/festival 3-for-1. So metastock.com/festival if you want to just do a free trial. Festival 3-for-1 if you want to play with it until October at $25 a month. Either way, it's a software I wouldn't trade without. I absolutely love it. I scan twice a day, and I wouldn't be able to trade without it just because I spend so much time working. So if you're in a similar situation, or if you just want something that can help you evaluate and identify those good opportunities in the market, there is a reason this has been rated #1 32 years in a row. So that's all I've got.